Me again. I'm going to try and finish this book. But yeah, I had to stop because I had outreach and I wanted something to eat. Okay. They go out of date tomorrow, says Raj, as he lumbered over to the freezer cabinet, slid open the glass top and pulled out a cardboard box of cornettos. A freezing cold mist immediately shrouded the shop. Look, best before 15th of November. Ben studied the box. It says best before 15th November 1996. Well, says Raj, even more reason to put them on special offer. Okay, Ben, this is my final offer. Buy one box of Cornettos, I will give you 10 boxes absolutely free. Really, Raj? No thanks, said Ben. He peered into the freezer cabinet to see what else might be lurking in there. It had never been defrosted, and Ben wouldn't have been surprised to find a perfectly preserved woolly mammoth from the ice age inside. Hang on, he says, as he moved a few frost-encrusted isolates out of the way. It's in here, Plumbing Weekly. Ah, yes, I remember now, says Raj. I put it in there to keep it fresh for you. Fresh, said Ben. Well, young man, the magazine comes out on a Tuesday, but it's Friday today. So I put it in the freezer to keep it fresh for you, Ben. I didn't want it to go off. Ben wasn't sure how many magazines. Wasn't sure how any magazine could have gone off, but he thanked the newsagent anyway. That's very kind of you, Raj. And I'll have a pocket of Warlows, please. I can offer you 73 packets of Warlows for the price of 72, explained the newsagent with a smile that was meant to enhance. No thanks, Raj. 1,000 packs of Warlows for the price of 999.98? No thanks, said Ben. Are you mad, Ben? That's a wonderful offer. All right, you drive a hard bargain, Ben. 1,007 packets of Warlows for the price of 1,004. That's 3 packets of Warlows absolutely free. I'll just take 1 packet and the magazine, thank you. Of course, young sir. I can't wait to get stuck into Plumbing Weekly later. I have to go and spend the whole night with my boring old granny again. It had been a week since Ben's last visit, and the dreaded Friday had rolled round once more. His parents were going to see a chick flick, according to his mum. Romance and kissing and all that go. Yuckety yuck. Tut tut tut, said Raj, shaking his head as he counted out Ben's change. Ben instantly felt ashamed. He had never seen the newsagent do this before. Like all the other local kids, Ben regarded Raj as one of us, not one of them. He was so full of life and laughter. Raj seemed a world away from parents and teachers and all the grown-ups who felt they could tell you off because they were bigger than you. Just because your granny is old, young Ben, said Raj, doesn't mean that she is boring, and I am getting on a bit myself, and whenever I have met your granny, I have found her to be a very interesting lady. But don't be too hard on her, Ben, pleaded Raj. We will all be old one day, even you, and I'm sure your granny will have a secret or two. Old people always do. Chapter 4, Misery and Wonder. Ben wasn't at all sure that Raj was right about Granny. That night it was the same old story. Granny served up cabbage soup followed by cabbage pie, and for dessert it was cabbage mousse. She even found some cabbage-flavoured after-dinner chocolates. Somewhere after dinner, Granny and Ben sat down together on the musty sofa as they always did. Scrabble time, explained Granny. Cabbage-flavoured chocolates were not as nice as they sound, and they don't sound that nice. Great thought, Ben. Tonight's going to be 1,000,000 times more boring than last week. Ben detested Scrabble. If he had his way, he would build a rocket and blast all the Scrabble boards in the world into outer space. Granny pulled out the dusty old Scrabble box from the sideboard and set up the game on the poof. Ben sighed. It seemed like decades later, but was probably just hours. Ben stared at his letters. Before scanning the board, he had already put down boring, ancient, quack for double word score, pointless, pongy, this had to be checked in the dictionary, wrinkles, cabbage sick, triple word score, escape, help, I hate this stupid game. Granny had disallowed this on account of it not being one word. He had an E, an M, an I, and a U, and a D. Granny had just put down merriment, double word score. So Ben used the T at the end to form the word tedium. Well, it's nearly 8 o'clock, young man, announced Granny, looking at a little gold watch. Time for your beddy buys, I think. Ben groaned inwardly. Beddy buys? He wasn't a toddler. But I don't have to go to bed until 9 o'clock at home, he protested, and not until 10 o'clock when I haven't got school in the morning. No, Ben, off you go to bed, please. The old lady could be quite firm when she wanted to be. And don't forget to brush your teeth. I'll be up soon to give you a bedtime story, if you like. He always used to love a bedtime story. Later, Ben stood at the sink in the bathroom. It was a cold, damp room with no window. Some of the tiles had fallen off the wall. There was just one sad little frayed towel and a very worn bar of soap that looked like it was half soap, half mould. Ben hated brushing his teeth, so he pretended to brush his teeth. Pretending to brush your teeth is simple. Don't tell your parents, I told you, but if you want to try it yourself, all you have to do is follow this handy step-by-step guide. Number 1, turn the cold tap. 2, wet the toothbrush. 3, squeeze a tiny amount of toothpaste onto your finger and place in your mouth. 4, move the trace of toothpaste around your mouth with your tongue. 5, spit. 6, turn off the tap. See, it's so easy, nearly as easy as brushing your teeth. Ben looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. He was 11 years old, but shorter than he wanted to be. He stood on his tiptoes for a moment. Ben was aching to be older. Only a few more years, he thought, and he would be taller and heavier and spottier, and his Friday nights would be very different. He wouldn't have to stay at boring old grannies anymore. Instead, Ben would be able to do all the things the older kids in the town did on Friday nights. Hang around with a gang of friends outside the off-license, waiting for someone to tell you off. Alternately, sit at the bus stop with some girls in tracksuits and chew gum and never actually get on a bus. Yes, a world of misery and wonder awaited him. However, for now, even though it was still light outside, he could hear boys in the nearby park playing football. It was time for Ben to go to sleep. In a hard little bed in a damp little room in his granny's run-down little bungalow that smelled of cabbage. Not just a little bit, a lot. Sighing, Ben got under the covers. Just then, Granny gently opened the door to his bedroom. He quickly shut his eyes and pretended to be asleep. She lumbered over to the bed, and Ben could feel her standing over him for a moment. I was going to tell you that bedtime story, she whispered. The old lady had often told him stories when he was younger, about pirates and smugglers and master criminals, but he was far too old for all that nonsense now. What a shame you're asleep already, she said. Well, I just wanted to say that I love you. Good night, my little Benny. He hated being called Benny too, and little. The nightmare continued as Ben sensed his granny bending over to give him a kiss. The prickly old hairs on her chin bristled uncomfortably against his cheek. Then he heard the familiar rhythmic quacking sound as her bum squeaked with every step. She squeaked her way back to the door and closed it behind her, sealing the smell in. That's it, thought Ben. I have to escape. Chapter 5. A little broken. Ark! Ark! No, reader, you haven't bought the Swally edition of this book by mistake. That was the sound Ben was waiting for. Granny snoring. And she was asleep. Ark! Ben crept out of his room and made his way over to the telephone in the hall. It was one of those old-style telephones that purred like a cat when you dialed a number. "Mum," he whispered. "I can hardly hear you, dear," she shouted back. There was loud jazz music playing in the background. Mum and Dad were at the arena again, watching Strictly Stars Dancing live on stage live. She was probably drooling as Fabio Fellini swiveled his hips and broke the hearts of thousands of women of a certain age. "What's the matter? Is everything all right? The old bat hasn't died, has she?" "No, she's fine, but I hate it here. Can't you come and pick me up, please?" whispered Ben. "Fabio hasn't even done his second dance yet." "Please," he pleaded. "I want to come home. Granny's such a bore. It's torture spending time with her." "Speak to your dad." Ben heard a muffled sound as she passed the phone over. "Hello?" shouted Dad. "Please keep your voice down." "What?" He shouted again. "Shh! Keep your voice down. You're going to wake up Granny. Can you come and pick me up, Dad? Please. I hate it here." "No, we cannot. Seeing this show is a once-in-a-lifetime experience." "You saw it last Friday," protested Ben. "Twice in a lifetime then." "And you said you were going again next Friday too." "Look, if I have any more of your cheek, young lad, you can stay with her until Christmas. Goodbye." With that, his dad hung up. Ben carefully placed the receiver back in its cradle, and the phone made the quietest ding. Suddenly, he noticed that Granny's snoring had stopped. Had she heard what he said? He looked behind him and thought he saw her shadow, but then it was gone. It was true that Ben found her dreadfully dull, but he didn't want her to know that. After all, she was a lovely old widow, and her husband had died long before Ben was even born. Guiltily, Ben crept back to the spare room and waited and waited and waited for the morning. At breakfast, Granny seemed different, quieter, older maybe, a little broken. Her eyes looked bloodshot as if she'd been crying. "Did you hear?" thought Ben. I really hope she didn't hear. She stood by the oven as Ben sat at the tiny kitchen table. Granny was pretending to be interested in her calendar, which was pinned to the wall by the oven. Ben could tell she was pretending, because there was nothing interesting on the calendar. This was a typical week in Granny's hectic life. Monday, make cabbage soup. Play Scrabble against yourself. Read a book. Tuesday, make cabbage pie. Read another book. Blow off. Wednesday, make the dish chocolate surprise. The surprise is that it isn't made of chocolate at all. It's in fact 100% cabbage. Thursday, suck a Marie mint all day. She can make one mint last a lifetime. Friday, still suck the same Marie mint. My wonderful grandson visits. Saturday, my wonderful grandson leaves. Have another nice sit down. Pooped. Sunday, eat roast cabbage with braised cabbage and boiled cabbage on the side. Blow off all day. Eventually, Granny turned away from the calendar. "Your mummy and daddy will be here soon," she finally said, breaking the silence. "Yes," said Ben, looking at his watch. "Just a few more minutes." The minutes felt like hours, days even, months. A minute can be a long time. Don't believe me? Then sit in a room on your own and do nothing but count to 60 seconds. Have you done it yet? I don't believe you. I'm not joking. I want you to really do it. I am not carrying on with the story until you do. It's not my time I'm wasting. I've got all day. Right, have you done it now? Good. Now back to the story. Just after 11 o'clock, the little brown car pulled up in front of Granny's house, much like a getaway driver from a bank robbery. Mum kept the engine running. She leaned over and opened the passenger door so Ben could dive in quickly and they could zoom off. As Ben trudged towards the car, Granny stood at the front door. "Would you like to come in for a cup of tea, Linda?" she shouted. "No thanks," said Ben's mum. "Quick, Ben, for goodness sake, get in." She revved the engine. "I don't want to have to talk to the old dear." "Shh," said Ben, "she'll hear you." "I thought you didn't like Granny," said Mum. "I didn't say that, Mum. I said I found her boring. But I don't want her to know that, do I?" Mum laughed as they sped off out of grey clothes. "I wouldn't worry, Ben. Your Granny isn't really with it. She probably doesn't understand what you're saying half the time." Ben frowned. He wasn't sure about that. He wasn't sure at all. He remembered Granny's face at the breakfast table. Suddenly, he had a horrible feeling she understood a lot more than he had ever realised. Chapter 6, Cold Wet Egg. This Friday night would have been just as spectacularly dull as the last, if Ben hadn't remembered to bring his magazine with him this time. Once again, Mum and Dad dumped their only child at Granny's. As soon as he arrived, Ben rushed past her into his cold, damp little bedroom, shut the door, and read his copy of the latest Pummeling Weekly from cover to cover. There was an amazing guide with lots and lots of colourful photographs, showing how to install the new generation of combi boilers. Ben folded over the corner of the page. Now he knew what he wanted for Christmas. Once he'd finished the magazine, Ben sighed and headed to the living room. He knew he wouldn't stay in his bedroom all evening. Granny looked up and smiled when she saw him. Scrabble time, she explained cheerily, holding up the board. The next morning the air was thick with silence. Another boiled egg, said Granny as they sat in her run-down little kitchen. Ben didn't like boiled eggs and hadn't finished his first one yet. Granny could even ruin food this simple. The egg would always come out of old waterway, and the soldiers were always burned to a cinder. When the old lady wasn't looking, Ben would flick the egg gloop out of the window with a spoon and hide the soldiers behind the radiator. There must be a whole platoon of them back there by now. No thanks, Granny. I'm completely full, replied Ben. Delicious boiled egg, thank you, he added. Murmured the old lady, unconvinced. It's a bit nippy. I'll just go to put another cardigan on, she said, even though she was already wearing two. Granny trundled out of the room, quacking as she went. Ben flicked the rest of his egg out of the window, and then tried to find something else to eat. He knew that Granny had a secret stash of chocolate biscuits that she kept on a top shelf in the kitchen. Granny would give Ben one on his birthday. Ben would also help himself to one from time to time, when his Granny's cabbage-based delicacies left him as hungry as a wolf. So he quickly slid his chair over to the cupboard and stood on it to reach the biscuits. He lifted the biscuit tin. It was a big silver Jubilee assorted tin from 1977 that featured a scratched and faded portrait of a much younger Queen Elizabeth II on the lid. It felt really heavy, much heavier than usual. Strange. Ben shook the tin a little. It didn't feel or sound like it had biscuits inside. It was like it had stones or marbles in it. Even stranger. Ben unscrewed the lid. He stared. And then he stared some more. He couldn't believe what was inside. Diamonds, rings, bracelets, necklaces, earrings. Oh, great big sparkling diamonds. Diamonds, diamonds, and more diamonds. Ben was no expert, but he thought there must be thousands of pounds worth of jewellery in the biscuit tin. Maybe even millions. Suddenly he heard Granny quacking her way to the room. Fumbling desperately, he put the lid back on and placed the tin on the shelf. He leaped down and yanked his chair over and sat at the table. Glancing at the window, he realised that his flicked egg hadn't flown out into the garden, but was smeared across the glass. Granny would need a blowtorch to get that off if it tried, so he rushed over to the window and sucked the cold white egg off the glass. Then returned to his seat. It was too unpleasant to swallow, so, in a panic, Ben kept it in his mouth. Granny shuffled back into the kitchen, wearing her third cardigan, still quacking. Better get your coat on, young man. Your mummy and daddy will be here in just a tick, she said with a smile. Ben reluctantly swallowed the cold, wet egg. It slipped down his throat. Yuck. Yuck and double yuck. Yes, he said, fearing he would vomit and deposit the egg back on the window. Scrambled. Chapter 7, Bags of Manure. Can I stay at Granny's again tonight? Announced Ben from the backseat of his mum's and dad's little brown car. The diamonds in the biscuit tin were so puzzling, he was desperate to do some detective work. Maybe even search every nook and cranny of the old lady's bungalow. This was an awfully mysterious. Raj said his granny might have a secret or two, and it seemed like the newsagent was right. And whatever Granny's secret was, it must be pretty amazing to explain all those diamonds. What if she used to be a zillionaire, or worked in a diamond mine, or been left them by a princess? Ben couldn't wait to find out. What? Asked Dad, astonished. But you said she was boring, said Mum, equally astonished, irritated even. You said all old people are. I was just joking, said Ben. Dad studied his son in the rear-view mirror. He found understanding his plumbing-obsessed son hard enough at the best of times. Right now, Ben wasn't making any sense at all. Well, if you're sure, Ben, I'm sure, Dad. I'll call when we get home, just to check she's not going out. Going out, scoffed Mum. The old dear wasn't gone out for 20 years, she added with a chuckle. Ben wasn't sure why this was funny. I took her out to the garden centre that time, protested Dad. It was only because you needed someone to help you carry a load of bags of manure, said Mum. She had a super day out, though, said Dad, son and miffed. Later, Ben sat alone on his bed. His mind was racing. Where on earth had Granny got the diamonds? How much were they worth? Why would she live in that sad little bungalow if she was so rich? Ben searched and searched his mind, but couldn't find any news. Then Dad entered the room. Granny's busy. She said she'd love to see you, but she's going out tonight, he announced. What? Spluttered Ben. Granny hardly ever went out. Ben hadn't seen her calendar. The mystery was getting even more mysterious. Chapter 8. A small wig in a jar. Ben hid in the bushes outside Granny's bungalow, whilst Mum and Dad were downstairs in the living room watching Strictly Stars Dancing on the TV. Ben had scaled down the drain pipe outside his bedroom window and cycled the 5 miles to Granny's. This alone was a sign of how curious Ben had become about his granny. He didn't like cycling. His parents were always encouraging him to get more exercise. They told him that being fit was absolutely necessary if he wanted to be a professional dancer. But since it didn't make much difference when you were lying under a sink, screwing in a new length of copper piping, Ben had never willingly taken any exercise. Until now. If Granny was really going out for the first time in 20 years, Ben had to know where. It might just hold the key to how she came to have a ton of diamonds in her biscuit tin. So he huffed and puffed along the canal towpath with his clunky old bike until he came to Grey Close. The only thing that was the only good thing was that being November, instead of being drenched in sweat, Ben was only mildly moist. He had pedalled fast because he knew he didn't have that much time. Strictly Stars Dancing seemed to go on for hours, days even, but it had taken Ben half an hour to cycle over to Granny's. And as soon as the show was over, Mum would be calling to him downstairs for his tea. Ben's parents loved all the dancing TV shows, dancing on ice skates, so you think you might be able to dance a bit, but they were completely obsessed with Strictly Stars Dancing. They had recorded every single episode. And had an unrivaled collection of Strictly memorabilia in the house, including a lime green thong once worn by Fabio Fellini, framed with a photograph of him wearing it, a Strictly Stars Dancing real fake leather bookmark, some athlete's foot powder signed by Fabio's professional dance partner, the Australian beauty Ava Bunce, his and hers official Strictly Stars Dancing leg warmers, a CD of songs nearly used on the show, a small wig in a jar that had been worn by the presenter Sir Dick Dogley, a life-size cardboard cutout of Fabio Fellini that had some of Mum's lipstick smudged around the mouth, some earwax in a jar that belonged to a celebrity contestant, the politician Dame Rachel Produce MP, a pair of tang tights that smelled of Eva Bunce, a doodle on a napkin of a man's bottom drawer by the nasty judge, Craig Malteser Warwood, a set of officially Strictly Stars dancing egg cups, a full tube of Ray Jacks used by Fabio Fellini, a Craig Malteser Warwood posable action figure, a Hawaiian hot pizza crust that had been left by Fabio, complete with a signed letter of authority from Ina Books. It was a Saturday, so after the show had finished, the family were going to be having cheesy beans and sausage. Neither Mom nor Dad could cook, but all of the ready-made meals Ben's mum took out of the freezer, pricked with a fork, and placed in the microwave for 3 minutes. This was his favourite. Ben was hungry and didn't want to miss it, which meant he needed to get back from Granny's house quickly. If it had been a Monday night, say, they were having chicken tikka lasagna, or a Wednesday and a doner kebab pizza, or a Sunday and a Yorkshire pudding chow mein. The supermarket chow mein, where Ben's dad would like to bring the cuisine of two countries together in an easy microwavable pack. By combining dishes from different countries, perhaps they could be able to bring peace to a deeply divided world, or maybe not. Was on the menu. Ben wouldn't have been so bothered. Night was falling. As it was late November, it was rapidly growing colder and darker, and Ben was shivering in the bushes as he spied on his granny. Where can she be going, thought Ben. She hardly ever goes out. He saw a shadow move in her bungalow. Then her face appeared at the window, and Ben quickly shot out of view. The bushes rustled. Shh, thought Ben. Had the old lady seen him? After a few moments, the front door opened slowly, and out stepped a figure dressed entirely in black. A black jumper, black leggings, black gloves, black socks, probably even a black bra and knickers. A black balaclava disguised the face, but from the stoop, Ben knew it was Granny. She looked like someone from one of the covers of the books she loved reading. She straddled her mobility scooter and revved the engine. Where on earth was she going? And more importantly, why was she dressed like a ninja? Ben propped his bike against the bushes and got ready to tail his own grandmother, which was one thing he had never in a million years dreamed of doing. Like a spider scuttling around a bathroom, trying not to be seen, Granny steered her scooter close to the walls. Ben followed on foot as quietly as possible. It wasn't too difficult to keep up, as the top speed of the mobility scooter was 4 miles per hour. Whirling across the road, she suddenly looked back as if she had heard something, and Ben dived behind a tree. He waited, holding his breath. Nothing. After a few moments, he poked his head around the trunk and saw that Granny had reached the end of the road. He continued his chase. Soon they were near the town's high street. It was old but deserted, but as it was early evening, all the shops had shut for the day, and the pubs and restaurants had yet to open for the night. Granny stayed out of the glow of the streetlights, swerved in the doorways as she neared her destination. Ben grasped when she saw where she had parked. The jeweler's shop. Necklaces and rings and watches sparkled in the window. Ben couldn't believe his eyes as Granny took out a tin of cabbage soup from the scooter's basket. She glanced around theatrically, then pulled back her arm in readiness to smash the tin through the jeweler's shop window. "No!" shouted Ben. Granny dropped the tin. It smashed into the ground, and the cabbage soup oozed onto the pavement. "Ben," hissed Granny, "what are you doing here?" 9. The Black Cat. Ben stared at his granny as she stood by the jeweler's shop, dressed all in black. "Ben," she prompted, "what are you doing following me?" I... Ben was so shocked he couldn't form a sentence. "Well," she said, whatever you're doing here, you'll have the cops onto us in no time. We better get out of here. Quick, jump on." "But I can't." "Ben, we've got about 30 seconds before the CCTV camera comes on." She pointed to a camera screwed to the wall of an apartment block next to the row of shops. Ben jumped on the back of her mobility scooter. "You know when the CCTV cameras come on?" he asked. "Oh," said Granny, "you'll be surprised at what I know." Ben looked at her back. Ben looked at her back as she drove. He'd just seen her preparing to rob a jeweller's shop. How could he be more surprised? Clearly there was a lot more to this Granny than he had ever known. Hold on, said Granny, I'm going full throttle. She violently twisted the handle of the scooter to absolutely no effect that Ben could feel. They hummed off in the dark, going about 3 miles per hour with an increased weight. The black cat, repeated Ben. They were finally back, sitting in Granny's living room. She had made a pot of tea and laid out some chocolate biscuits. Yes, that's what they call me, replied Granny. I was the most wanted jewel thief in the world. Ben's head was exploding with a million questions. Why? Where? Who? What? When? It was possible to know what to ask first. No one else knows except you, Ben, continued Granny. Even your granddad went to his grave not knowing. Can you keep a secret? We have to swear not to tell a soul. But Granny's face looked fierce for a moment. Her eyes narrowed and darkened like a snake about to bite. You have to swear, the old lady said, with an intensity Ben had never witnessed before. Us criminals take our oaths very seriously indeed. Ben gulped, a little scared. I swear not to tell anyone, not even your mother and father, barked Granny, nearly spitting out her false teeth in the process. I swear not to tell anyone, barked back Ben. Ben had been learning about Venn diagrams at school recently, as he had sworn not to tell anyone, and let's say that anyone is set A, then Mum and Dad are obviously included in set A, and are, of course, a subset of it. So there was really no need for Granny to ask Ben to swear a second time. Take a look at this handy diagram. Set A is anyone, set B is Mum and Dad. But Ben didn't think that his Granny would be interested in Venn diagrams right now, since she was still staring at him with those scary eyes. He sighed and said, All right, I swear not to tell Mum and Dad. Good boy, said Granny, as her hearing aid began to whistle. On one condition, ventured Ben. What's that? Said Granny, seeming a little startled by his nerve. You have to tell me everything. 10. Everything. It's about your age when I stole my first diamond ring, said Granny. Ben was astonished, partly at the idea that Granny had ever been his age, which seemed impossible, and partly because of the oblivious fact that 11-year-old girls do not usually steal diamonds, glitter pens, hair clips, toy ponies maybe, diamonds definitely not. I know you'd look at me with my Scrabble and my knitting and my fondness for cabbage and think I am just some boring old dear. No, said Ben, not entirely convincingly, but you forget, child, that I was young once. What was the first ring you stole? Said Ben eagerly. Did it have a really big diamond on it? The little old lady chuckled. Not so big, no. It was my first one. I've still got it somewhere. Go into the kitchen, will you, Ben, and fetch the Silver Jubilee biscuit tin from the shelf. Ben shrugged as if he knew nothing about the Silver Jubilee biscuit tin and its incredible contents. Whereabouts is it, Granny? Asked Ben as he left the living room. Just on top of the larder, boy, called Granny. Chop chop, your mummy and daddy will be wondering where you are soon. Ben remembered that he had wanted to rush home for cheesy beans on sausage. Suddenly, that seemed clumsily unimportant. He wasn't even feeling hungry anymore. Ben re-entered the room holding the tin. It was even heavier than he remembered. He passed it to his Granny. Good boy, she said as she rummaged through the tin and picked out a particularly beautiful little sparkler. Ah, yes, this is it. To Ben, the diamond rings looked pretty much the same. However, Granny seemed to know each of them as if they were her oldest friends. Such a little beauty, she said, as she brought the ring up to her eye for a closer inspection. This is the first one I stole, back when I was a nipper. Ben could imagine what Granny would have been like young. He had only known her as an old lady. He even imagined she had been born an old lady, that years ago in the hospital, when her mother had given birth and asked the midwife if it was a boy or a girl, the midwife had have replied, It's an old lady. I grew up in a small village, and my family were very poor, continued Granny. And up at the top of the hill was this grand country house where a lord and lady lived, Lord and Lady Davenport. It was just after the war, and we didn't have much food in those days. I was hungry, so one night at midnight, when everyone was asleep, I crept out of my mother and father's little cottage, under the cover of darkness. I made my way through the woods and up to the hill to Davenport House. Weren't you scared? Asked Ben. Yes, of course I was. Being alone in the dark woods at night, it was terrifying. There were guard dogs at the house, great big black Dobermans. So, as quickly as I could, I climbed a drain pipe and found an unlocked window. I was a very little girl at 11, small for my age, so I managed to squeeze myself through a tiny gap in the window, and I landed behind a velvet curtain. When I pulled back the curtain, I realised I was in Lord and Lady Davenport's bedroom. Oh no, said Ben. Oh yes, continued the old lady. I thought I might just take some food, perhaps. But next to the bed, I saw this little beauty, she indicated. The diamond ring. So you just took it? Being an international jewel thief is never that simple, young man, said Granny. The Lord and Lady were snoring heavily, but if I woke them, I'd be dead. The Lord always slept with a shotgun by the bed. A shotgun? Asked Ben. Yes, he was posh, and being posh, he liked hunting pheasants, so he owned many guns. Ben was sweating with nerves. But he didn't wake up and try and shoot you, did he? Be patient, young man, all in good time. I crept over to Lady Davenport's side of the bed and picked up the diamond ring. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. I'd never seen one up close before. My mother would never have dreamed of owning one. I don't need jewels, she would say to his children. You are my little diamonds. I wondered at the diamond in my hand for a moment. It was the most gorgeous thing I'd ever seen in my life. Then suddenly there was an almighty noise. Ben frowned. What was that? Lord Davenport was a big, fat, greedy man. He must have had too much to eat earlier because he let out the most enormous burp. Ben laughed and Granny laughed too. He knew burps weren't supposed to be funny, but he couldn't help laughing. It was so loud, said Granny, still chuckling. Burp! She mimicked. Ben was helpless with laughter now. It was so loud, continued Granny, that I was startled and dropped the ring on the polished wooden floor. It made quite a bang as it hit the deck, and both Lord and Lady Davenport woke up. Oh no! Oh yes. So I grabbed the ring and ran back to the open window. I didn't dare look behind me, as I could hear Lord Davenport cocking his shotgun. I leapt down onto the grass, and all of a sudden the lights of the house came on, and the dogs were barking, and I was running for my life. Then I heard a deafening sound. Another burp? Asked Ben. No, a gunshot this time. Lord Davenport was shooting at me as I ran down the hill and back into the woods. Then what happened? Granny looked at her little gold watch. My dear, you had better head home. Your mummy and daddy would be worried sick. I doubt it, said Ben. All they care about is stupid ballroom dancing. That's not true, said Granny unexpectedly. You know they love you. I want to hear the end of the story, said Ben, frustrated. He was desperate to know what happened next. You will, another day. But Granny, Ben, you have to go home. That's not fair. Ben, you must leave now. I can tell you what happened when you come another day. But, to be continued, she said. 11. Cheesy beans on sausage. Ben sped home on his bike, not even noticing his burning legs and aching chest. He was going so fast he thought the police might give him a speeding ticket. As the wheels raced round, so did his mind. Could his boing-old granny really be a gangster? A gangster granny? That must be why she liked books about gangsters so much. She was one. He slid through the back door just as the familiar Strictly Starts Dancing theme tune blasted out from the living room. He had made it home just in time. But as Ben was about to disappear upstairs and pretend he had been in his bedroom doing his homework, Mum burst into the kitchen. What are you doing? She asked surprisingly. You look very sweaty. Oh, nothing, said Ben, feeling very sweaty. Look at you, she continued as she approached him. You're sweating like a pig. Ben had seen a few pigs in his life, and none of them had been sweating. In fact, pig fans everywhere will tell you that pigs don't even have sweat glands, so they can't sweat. Wow, this book is actually really educational. I'm not sweating, Ben protested. Being accused of sweating made him sweat even more. You are sweating. Have you been out running? No, replied and now very sweaty Ben. Ben, don't lie to me. I'm your mother, she says, pointing at herself, a false nail flying off into the air in the process. Her false nails came off a lot. Once Ben had even found one in his microwavable parlor bolognese. If you haven't been out running, Ben, then why are you sweating? Ben had to think fast. The Strictly Stars dancing theme tune was coming to an end. I was dancing, he blurted out. Dancing? Mum didn't look convinced. Ben was no Fabio Flanini, and of course he hated ballroom dancing. Well, yes, I have changed my mind about ballroom dancing. I love it. But you said you hated it. Shot back at an increasingly suspicious Mum. Many, many times. Only the other week, you said that you would rather eat your own bogies than watch that rubbish. Hearing you say that was like a dagger through my heart. Mum was becoming visibly upset at the memory. I'm sorry, Mum, I really am. Ben reached out a hand to comfort her, and another false nail fell onto the floor. But now I love it. Honestly, it was just watching Strictly through the crack in the door and copying all the moves. Mum beamed with pride. She looked as if her whole life suddenly had meaning. Her face turned slightly happy yet sad, as if this was destiny. Do you want to be, she took a deep breath, professional dancer? Where's my cheesy beans and sausage? Wife, called Dad from the living room. Shut your face, Pete. Mum's eyes were wet with tears of joy. She hadn't cried so much since Fabio was kicked out of the show in week 2 last year. Fabio had been forced to partner Dame Rachel produce. He was so podgy, all he could do was drag her on the floor. Well, Ben desperately searched for a way to get out of this one. Yeah, that wasn't it. Yes, I knew it, Mum, cried Mum. Pete, come in here a moment. Ben has got something he needs to tell you. Dad trudged in wearily. What is it, Ben? You're not joining the circus, are you? My word, you are sweaty. No, Pete, said Mum, slowly and delicately, as if she was about to read out the name of a winner at an awards ceremony. Ben doesn't want to be a silly old plumber anymore. Thank goodness for that, said Dad. He wants to be... Mum looked at her son. Tell him, Ben. Ben opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Mum chimed in. Ben wants to be a ballroom dancer. Oh, there is a god, explained Dad. He looked up at the nicotine-stained ceiling as if he might catch a glimpse of the Divine One. He was just practicing in the kitchen, jabbered Mum excitedly, copying all the moves from the show. Dad looked into his son's eyes and shook his hand manfully. That's wonderful news, my boy. Your Mum and me haven't achieved much in our lives, what with Mum being a nail polisher. I am a nail technician, Pete, corrected Mum scornfully. There is a world of difference, Pete, and you know that. Nail technician, sorry. Me being just a boring old security guard just because I was too fat for the police. The most excitement I've had all year was when I stopped a man in a wheelchair speeding out of the store with a tin of custard concealed under his blanket. But you becoming a ballroom dancer, well, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to us. The very greatest, said Mum. The very, very greatest, agreed Dad. Really, it's the very, very, very greatest, said Mum. Let's just agree it's extremely great, said Dad, irritated. Only I warn you, boy, it's not going to be easy. If you train 8 hours a day, every day for the next 20 years, you might just get on the TV show. Maybe he can do the American version, explained Mum. Oh, Pete, just imagine our boy a huge star in America. Well, let's not jump the gun, wife. He's not won the British one yet. Right now, we have to think about entering him in for a junior competition. You're right, Pete. Gail told me there's one in the town hall just before Christmas. Crack open the sparkling wine, wife. Our son is going to be a cha-cha champion. A naughty word exploded in Ben's head. How on earth was he going to get out of this? The love bomb. Ben had spent the whole of Sunday morning being measured up by Mum for his dance outfit. She had stayed up through the night sketching possible designs. Under duress, he was forced to choose one and pointed a limp finger at the one that he thought was the least hideous. Mum's hand-drawn options ranged all the way from embarrassing to humiliating. There was the woodland, the fruit cocktail, thunder and lightning, accident emergency, ice and slice, head on the badger, the Courtly Street, eggs and bacon, confetti, the underwater world. Burning Love, Cheese and Pickle, the Solar System, Piano Man. But the one Ben thought was the least worst was the Love Bomb. We will have to find you a nice young girl to partner with for the competition, said Mum. Exactly, she was accidentally ran one of her fake nails under the sewing machine and it exploded. Ben hadn't thought about dance partners. Not only was he going to have to dance, he was going to have to dance with a girl. Not just any girl, but a revolting, precocious, sparkling fake tanned, leotard wearing, over makeup one. Ben was still at the age when he thought girls were as appealing as foxborn. Oh, I'm just going to dance on my own, he sputtered. A solo piece, explained Mum. How original. In fact, I can't stand here talking all day. I better go and practice, said Ben as he disappeared upstairs to his room. He shut the door, turned on his radio, and then climbed out of the window and raced over to Granny's bungalow on his bike. So you were running off into the woods when Lord Davenport started shooting at you, Ben was eagerly prompting his granny. For the moment, her mind looked blank. Was I? Said Granny, looking increasingly befuffed. That's where the story ended last time. You said you had snatched the ring from the Davenport's bedroom and were running across the lawn when you heard shots. Ah, yes, muttered Granny, her face suddenly illuminated. Ben smiled broadly. He suddenly remembered how he had used to love his granny telling stories when he was younger, transporting him to a magical world, a world where you paint pictures in your mind that are more thrilling than all the movies or TV shows or video games in the universe. Only a couple of weeks ago he had pretended to be asleep to stop her telling him a bedtime story. Clearly he had forgotten how thrilling stories could be. I was running and running, continued Granny breathlessly, as if she was actually running, and I heard a shot ring out. Then another. I knew from the sound that it was definitely a shotgun rather than a rifle. What's the difference? Asked Ben. Well, a rifle shoots one bullet and is more accurate, but a shotgun sprays hundreds of little deadly balls of lead. Any idiot can hit you if they fire a shotgun in your direction. And did he? Asked Ben. His smile had faded now. He was generally worried. Yes, but luckily I was far away by then, so I was only grazed. I could hear the dogs barking too. They were hunting me, and I was only a small girl. If they had caught me, the hounds would have ripped me to shreds. Ben gasped in horror. So how did you get away? He asked. I took a chance. I couldn't outrun the dogs through the forest. The fastest runner in the world couldn't. But I knew the woods really well. I used to play in them for hours with my brothers and sisters. I knew if I could get across the stream, then the dogs would lose the scent. How come? Dogs can't follow a scent across water, and there was a great oak tree just on the other side of the stream. If I climbed that tree, I might be safe. Ben couldn't imagine his granny climbing stairs, let alone a tree. She had lived in her bungalow ever since he could remember. More shots rang out through the darkness as I ran towards the stream, continued the old lady. As I stumbled in the glow of the forest, I tripped on a tree root and fell face first in the mud. Scrambling to my feet, I turned around to see an army of men on horseback led by Lord Davenport. They were carrying flame torches and holding shotguns. The whole forest was lit up with the fire from the torches. I jumped into the stream. I was around this time of year, in the depth of winter, and the water was icy. The cold shocked me, and I could hardly breathe. I clapped my hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. I could hear the dogs getting nearer and nearer, barking and barking. There must have been dozens of them. I looked behind me and I could see their sharp teeth glimmering in the moonlight. So I waded across the stream and started climbing the tree. My hands were muddy and my legs and feet were wet, and I kept slipping down the trunk. I finally rubbed my hands on my nightshirt and began to climb again. I scrambled to the very top of the tree and stayed as still as I could. I could hear the dogs and the army of Davenport's men follow the stream down to a different part of the forest. The dogs' ferocious barks became distant, and after a while the torches were just specks in the distance. I was safe. I shivered up the tree for hours. I waited until dawn, slid down the tree, and made my way back to the cottage. I crept into bed and lay there for a few moments before the sun rose. Ben could picture everything she described perfectly in his mind. Granny had him utterly spellbound. Did they come looking for you? He asked. Well, no one got a good look enough at me, so Davenport had his men search everywhere in the village. Every cottage was turned upside down to look for the ring. Didn't you say anything? I wanted to. I felt so guilty, but knew if I owned up I would be in deep trouble. Lord Davenport would have had me publicly flogged in the village square. So what did you do? I swallowed it. Ben could believe his ears. The ring, Granny. You swallowed the ring? I thought it was the best way to hide it. In my stomach. A few days later it came out when I went to the toilet. That must have been painful, said Ben, his bum wincing at the thought. Passing a big diamond ring out of his bottom didn't sound in any way enjoyable. It was very painful, excruciating in fact. Granny grimaced. The good thing was that our cottage had been searched already from top to bottom. Not my bottom, the bottom of the cottage, I mean, Ben chuckled. A Davenport's men had moved on to searching the next village. So one night I went off into the woods and hid the ring. I placed it where no one would ever look, under a rock in the stream. Clever, said Ben. But that ring was only the first of many, Ben. Stealing had been the biggest thrill of my life, and as I lay in bed each night, all I dreamed about was stealing more and more diamonds. That ring was just the beginning, continued Granny in a low whisper, staring deep into Ben's innocent young eyes, of a lifetime of crime. 13. A lifetime of crime. Hours passed in what seemed like minutes, as Granny told her grandson how she had stolen every one of the dozen items spread out on the dining room floor. The huge tiara tiara had belonged to the wife of the President of the United States of America, the First Lady. Granny told Ben how, after 50 years earlier, she had sailed all the way to America on a cruise liner to steal it from the White House in Washington, and that whilst sailing back home, she had robbed every rich lady on the ship of her jewels. How she was caught red-handed by the captain of the ship and escaped by diving overboard and swimming the last few miles of the Atlantic Ocean back to England with all of the jewel hidden in her knickers. Granny told Ben that the sparkling emerald earrings that had been in her little bungalow for decades were worn over £1,000,000 each. They had once belonged to the wife of an enormous wealthy Indian Maharaja, Marian. The old lady recounted how she enlisted the help of a herd of elephants to steal them. She had coaxed the elephants to stand on top of each other to form a giant ladder, so she could scale the wall of the fort in India where the earrings were kept in the royal bedchamber. The most amazing tale of all was of how she stole the enormous deep blue diamond and the sapphire brooch that sat sparkling on her worn living room carpet. She told Ben that it had once belonged to the last Empress of Russia, who ruled with her husband the Tsar before the Communist Revolution in 1917. It had 4 years been under bulletproof glass at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, guarded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, by a platoon of fearsome Russian soldiers. This theft had required the most elaborate plan of all. Granny had hidden in an ancient suit of armour in the museum, which dated back hundreds of years to the time of Catherine the Great. Each time the soldiers looked the other way, she would edge forward to the metal suit a few millimeters, until she got close enough to the brooch. It took her a week. What, like Granny's footsteps? Asked Ben. Exactly, young man, she replied. Then I smashed the glass with the silver axe I was holding and grabbed the brooch. How did you escape, Granny? That's a good question. Now, how did I escape? Granny looked flummoxed. So it's my age, my boy. I forget things. Ben smiled spontly. That's okay, Granny. Soon the old lady's memory seemed to come back into focus. Ah, yes, I remember, she continued. I ran outside into the courtyard of the museum, leapt into the barrel of a huge cannon, and then fired myself to safety. Ben pictured this for a moment. His granny, in deepest, darkest Russia, flying through the air in an ancient suit of armour. It was hard to believe, but how else could this little old lady come to have such an astonishing collection of priceless gems? Ben loved Granny's daring tales. At home, Ben had never had stories read or told to him. His parents always just switched on the television and slumped down on the sofa when they got home from work. Hearing the old lady talk was so exciting. Ben wished he could move in with her. He could listen to Granny all day. There can't be a jewel in the world you haven't stolen, said Ben. Oh, yes, there is, young man. Hang on. What's that? What's what? Said Ben. Granny was pointing behind Ben's head, an expression of horror on her face. It's... What? Said Ben, not daring to turn around to see what she was pointing at. A silver ran down his spine. Whatever you do, said Granny, don't turn around. Nosy Neighbor. Ben couldn't help himself, and his eyes darted towards the window. For a brief moment, he saw a dark figure wearing a strange hat peer through the dirty glass, and then quickly disappear out of view. There was a man peering in at the window, said Ben breathlessly. I know, said Granny. I told you not to look. Shall I go out and see who it was? Said Ben, trying to hide the fact that he was more than a little frightened. Really, he wanted Granny to go out and see who it was. I bet it was my nosy neighbour, Mr. Parker. He lives at number 7. He always wears a pork pie hat and he keeps spying on me. Why? Asked Ben. Granny shrugged. I don't know. I imagine he has a rather cold head or something. What? Said Ben. Oh no, not his hat. I mean, why does he keep spying on you? He's a retired major, and now he runs the neighbourhood watch scheme in grey clothes. What's neighbourhood watch? Asked Ben. It's a group of local people who keep an eye out for burglars. But Mr. Parker just uses it as an excuse to spy on everyone. The nosy old git. I often come back from the supermarket with my bag of cabbages and see he's hiding behind his net curtain spying on me with a pair of binoculars. Is he suspicious about you? Said Ben. More than a little panicked. He didn't want to be thrown in jail for aiding and abetting a criminal. He didn't really know what abetting meant. Actually, but he knew it was a crime, and he knew he was too young for prison. He is suspicious about everyone. We have to keep an eye out for him, young lad. The man is a menace. Ben went over to the window and peered out. He couldn't see anyone. Ben's heart missed a beat. It was only the doorbell, but if they let Mr. Parker inside, he would see all the evidence the police would need to send Ben and his granny straight to prison. Don't answer it, said Ben, as he ran to the middle of the room and started stuffing all the jewels back in the tin, as quickly as he could. What do you mean, don't answer it? He knows I am at home. He just saw us through the window. You answer the door and I will hide the jewels. Me? Yes, you. Hurry. Ring. This ring was my instant. Mr. Parker had left his finger on the buzzer for even longer. Ben took a deep breath and walked calmly through the hall to the front door. He opened it. Outside stood a man in a very silly hat. Don't believe me? This is how silly his hat was. Yes, said Ben in a squeaky high voice. Can I help you? Mr. Parker put his foot inside the bungalow so the front door couldn't be closed on him. Who are you? He barked nasally. He had a very big nose, which made him seem even nosier than he was. And he already seemed extremely nosy. Because he had a big nose, he also had a very nasal voice, which made everything he said, however serious, seem a little bit absurd. But his eyes shone red like a demon. I am Granny's friend, spluttered Ben. Why did I say that? He thought. In truth, he was in a terrible panic, and his tongue was running away with him. Friend, snarled Parker, pushing open the front door. He was stronger than Ben, and soon forced his way inside. I mean grandson, Mr. Parker, sir, said Ben, retreating back towards the living room. Why are you lying to me? He says, taking several paces forward as Ben took several Why are you lying to me? He said, taking several paces forward as Ben took several paces back. It was as if they were dancing the tango. I'm not lying, said Ben. They reached the living room door. If you can't go in there, yelled Ben, thinking of the jewels still scattered all over the carpet. Why not? Because Granny is doing her naked yoga. Ben needed a dramatic excuse to stop Mr. Parker barging through the door and seeing the jewels. He was pretty sure he had hit the jackpot, as Mr. Parker paused and frowned his brow. Sadly, the nosy neighbor was not convinced. Naked yoga, a likely story. I need to talk to your grandmother right away. Now get out of my way, you nasty little worm of a boy, he said as he shoved the boy aside and opened the living room door. Granny must have heard Ben through the door because when Mr. Parker burst into the room, she was standing in her bra and knickers in a tree pose. Mr. Parker, do you mind? Said Granny, in mock horror that she had seen her in a state of undress. Mr. Parker's eyes spun round the room. He didn't know where to look, so he fixed his glare on the now bare carpet. Excuse me, madame, but I need to ask you, where are those jewels I saw a moment ago? Ben spied the silver jubilee biscuit tin poking out from behind the sofa. Subconsciously, he edged it out of view with his foot. What jewels, Mr. Parker? Have you been spying on me again? Demanded Granny, still in her underwear. Well, he spluttered. I had good reason. I was suspicious when I saw a young gentleman enter your property. I thought he might be a burglar. I let him in through the front door. He may have been a very charming burglar. He may have weaseled his way into your confidence. He's my grandson. He stays every Friday night. Ah, said Mr. Parker triumphantly, but it's not Friday night, so you can see why my suspicions are raised. And as head of Grey Close Neighbourhood Watch, I must report anything suspicious I see to the police. I've got a good mind to report you to the police, Mr. Parker, said Ben. Granny looked at him curiously. Whatever for, said the man. His eyes narrowed. They were now so red it was like there was a fire in his brain. For spying on old ladies in their underwear, said Ben triumphantly. Granny winked at Ben. She was fully clothed when I looked through the window, protested Mr. Parker. That's what they all say, said Granny. Now get out of my house before you are arrested for being a peeping Tom. You've not heard the last of me, good day, said Mr. Parker. With that, he spun to his heels and left the room. Granny and Ben heard the front door slam behind him, and they ran over to the window and watched him scuttle back to his bungalow. I think we frightened him off, said Ben. But he'll be back, said Granny. We have to be very careful. Yes, said Ben, more than a little alarmed. We better hide this tin somewhere else. Granny thought for a moment. Yes, I'll put it under the floorboards. Okay, said Ben, but first, yes, Ben, you might want to get dressed. "15. Reckless and thrilling. When Granny had put her clothes on, she and Ben sat down on the sofa. Granny, before Mr. Parker turned up, you were telling me where there was one jewel that you never stole, Ben whispered. There is something quite special that every great thief in the world would love to get their hands on, but it's impossible. It just can't be done. I bet you can do it, Granny. You're the greatest thief in the world has ever known. Thank you, Ben. Perhaps I am, or rather, was. And stealing these particular jewels might be every great thief's dream, but it would just be, well, impossible. Jewels? There were more than one. Yes, my dear. The last time anyone tried to steal them was 300 years ago. A Captain Blood, I believe, and I am not sure the Queen would be pleased, she chuckled. You don't mean the crown jewels? Yes, my boy. Ben had learned about the crown jewels in a history lesson at school. History was one of the few subjects he liked, mainly because of all the glory punishments they used to have in the olden days. Hanged, drawn, and quartered was his absolute favourite. But he also liked the breaking wheel, being burnt at the stake, and of course a red-hot poker up the bum. Who doesn't? At school, Ben had learned that the crown jewels were in fact a set of crowns, swords, sceptres, rings, bracelets, and orbs. some of which were nearly 1,000 years old. They were used when a new king or queen was crowned, and since 1303, the year, not the time, they had been kept under lock and key in the Tower of London. Ben had begged his parents to take him to see them, but they had moaned that London was too far away, even though it wasn't that far. To be honest, they never really went anywhere as a family. When he was younger, Ben used to listen in silent wonder to his classmates as they recounted their Mandarin adventures and show and tell. Trips to the seaside, visits to the museums, even holidays abroad. The knot in his stomach would tighten when his turn came. He was too embarrassed to admit that he had got done during the holidays. It was eat microwave meals and watch TV. So he would make up stories about flying kites and climbing trees and exploring castles. But now he had the greatest show and tell of all time. His granny was an eternal jewel thief, a gangster, except if he showed or told this, the old dear would be put in prison and they would throw away the key. Ben realised this was the big chance to do something crazy and reckless and thrilling. I can help you, said Ben in a cool and calm manner, though his heart was beating faster than ever. Help me do what? Replied the old lady, a little bit guffed. Steal the crown jewels, of course, said Ben. And that's all for now because my throat is hurting right now. But at least I made it to chapter 16. Okay. I'm going to start from the beginning. Tilly says, "Hi Emily, how's Kieran's mum? Last I heard, she had the staples taken out, so she's starting to remember a lot more. Last I heard. Also, hello Cody Booth, and hello Summer." Kieran said, "I really love the film Gangsta Granny, however. Hearing the story sounds more better." Thank you very much, babes. I will be doing some more, probably tomorrow, or maybe later, but it's probably going to be tomorrow, because my throat is now hurting. So, yeah, I can't do any more reading right now. Okay. Pardon me. Are you still there, babes, anyway? Are you still there? Baby, are you still... Yeah, you're still there. I might do more of this tomorrow when I'm in the bus on the way to yours. So I'm going to leave here at 12, I said, didn't I? Was it 11? I'll leave here at 11 and then get to yours for about 1. Is that what I said? Didn't I say that? I'll leave here about 11. Did I say 11? Yeah, 11. Okay. I'm going now. So, I love you.